just want to kind of begin by thinking back to the op-ed that I wrote a few years ago. And in that, I talked a lot about just the totality of seasons that we had to that point in Oklahoma City. And over the last 16 years, one of the things that I think we've come to learn is that every season in the history of the Thunder is a chapter in and of itself. And it's how it lines up in the catalog of total seasons is really for history to kind of determine after that season's over. So what we have this year is really the opportunity to write the 17th chapter. And we're really excited about doing that. As we've gone through this period of time since we've been here, we've tried to build a team or teams of our own design that are built on the values and the principles of our community and the things that we really believe in as an organization that we want to represent. Each step of the way, expectations have followed us, sometimes really high, sometimes pretty low, most of the time pretty high. Those external expectations are things that we have seen internally or we internalize as possibilities. We see those external expectations as possibilities. The difference is that, external expectations are things that some people think should happen, and possibilities are things that we feel could happen, but we have a lot of respect for how hard it is for those things to take place. We don't think we're entitled to start on third base. We never have, and we don't expect anything to be handed over to us in any way. That's why we've always focused on being pace setters versus clock watchers. We haven't really got too involved with the external conversations. We've really just kind of focused on the things we can do with the season that we have, and then we'll see where that all fits into the history of the team, down the road. The principles are the same from when we began to reposition, replenish, and rebuild the team in 2008, and then again around 2021. The thing that we've also learned is that when we've made those pivots, the team has been extremely young. And those teams, to our benefit, have maintained their youth over a long period of time because they started so young. As far as this season goes, I think the longer I do this, I realize that if we're doing it well, we begin the season essentially staring at a blank canvas and basically starting over with a beginner's mindset. No rigid rules, not tied to certain assumptions, willing to be open and curious about whatever it is the team's going to signal to us over the course of time. And the focus has always been on learning and growing through the experiences that the team is able to cobble together, good or bad. And I think that's served us quite well over the course of time. This year we have two significant additions, I think everybody knows, with Isaiah Hartenstein and Caruso. And I think our experience with Chet last year is informative for us because we didn't take Chet into the season and try to wedge him into the team that existed before him. And we kind of broke things down and allowed ourselves to kind of, like I said earlier, stay open to whatever the signals were and to learn the trade-offs of each one of those decisions. I think that's a healthy way to look at it for us, and I think it's something that we'll need to adopt or repeat in this case. Excuse me. One other thing I think that's important that we've learned is that it's in any process, it's more important to know what is going to slow you down than what's going to speed you up. And through that kind of exploration, I think we've learned a lot of those things. We're going to need some time with this particular group, especially because we're not trying to wedge those guys in or have assumptions about how they're going to fit with certain players. We kind of have to allow that to take its course. And as a result, I think our continuity will not be great early. But if you look at continuity in the NBA, continuity generally shows up, or lack thereof, early in the year. I don't think it will be a big issue for us once we get into the year. We get some miles underneath us. The more you play together, the more you rep together, the more you learn. And we'll just need to kind of get some of that moving in order for us to get the kind of continuity that we'd like to have with this particular team. We've always seen the regular season as an opportunity to discover the team. I think anybody that's been here or covered the team for a long period of time understand what we mean when we say that. I do think as people, we generally all want to get ahead with what we already know. I don't think you can do that in the NBA. I think especially with 82 games, one of my favorite authors, Robert Caro, has a great saying about research where he says, you have to turn every single page. And I really like that relative to what it is that we have to do in order to discover the team. We have to really understand and go through every iteration to ensure that we're not shutting off potential pathways that could really help us or get us to another level, whether it's now or in the future. And that's really helped us find competitive advantages in the past, whether it's lineup constructions, end of game situations, player development pathways, player combinations, schematics, thematics. I think by turning every page, you give yourself every opportunity. I think we're also getting to the point in time as a team where there's some things in the regular season that have to be worked through and others that have to be worked around, where there's certain things that we're going to have to confront, even if that means not getting the immediate benefits or the numbers might not look particularly good. But ultimately, we're going to have to get good at addressing these particular situations, issues, whatever it might be. We could work around it, we could scheme around it, but ultimately, I think that makes you more fragile. And it makes you more breakable when you're ultimately going to be in situations where you're going to have to confront these things as a team. And I think that happens for you as you become better. And so there'll be some situations where we have to lose a battle to win the war, so to speak. And I think that's a healthy place to be for us and getting to that point. You've heard me talk about how do we continue to expand the potential of the team or the possibilities of the team. I've always felt and still feel that a lot of that has to do with just our play style. I think it's built to scale. I think it's really good for that. A lot of those things come back to less patterns, more rhythm. We've talked about that in the past. I think when the team is in sync and the team is on time, we're much harder to play against, like any team. But that takes a lot of work and great intention and great patience to try to capture that because it's really elusive. But when the team is in rhythm and we're playing instinctively, it makes us a much harder team to guard. Like I said, it also takes the degree of difficulty for our best players and makes it much lesser. It also allows our role players to have better opportunities at success. And I think the hardest thing in the NBA is to get everyone on the floor playing well at the same time. And that's like the holy grail for everybody. You may capture it, like I said, but it doesn't stay with you very long. And that's always what we're looking to try to do. I think the other thing for us is, and we've done a great job of this to this point, is just trying to avoid your turn, my turn play. Because that's you can default to that so easily with talented players, but I think ultimately that will kind of cap the team. It makes us easier to play against. And again, that's not something I think we've struggled with, but you have to be able to resist that, especially early in games and early in the regular season. If you've been around the NBA, you know that every season has ebbs and flows to it. We've talked about, every team gets thunderstormed on, rained on 3 or 4 times a year where it seems like the sky's falling. And when it's not on you, it's on 5 other teams. That's never going to change. We know that when that happens, externally, people will lose their minds. That is part of the world we live in. We have to exist within that. It's not changing. It's perfectly fine. We've said before, social media is a sport, but scrolling is a lifestyle. And that is something that everybody has to understand as we do what we do. You can get off the train at any point you want. We're all still on it for some reason, but it's because we love it. Another way of looking at the ebbs and flows is that it's really, optimistically, the way I look at it is, it's really growth and repair of a team. Every time the team is growing, it's breaking something that it's existing as, and it could make it harder. But then after we get better from that, you have to kind of move on from there. That's what I was talking about, working through things versus trying to kind of finagle your way around them. And I think if we see it as growth and repair, I think you can take some of those lessons and throw them into the future. But sometimes there'll be some plateaus and some regressions, and those are the times I think we can be at our best, because even in that ecosystem that we all exist, I think the team has done an excellent job of focusing on internal standards and not external conversations. And I think it's remarkable for a young group of players to have that mindset. And I think we have to work hard to try to continue to protect that as we go forward. Last thing on the season and the length of it, I think the depth of teams in the league, I think depth in general is really important. I think depth relative to the parity in the league that we see now is directly linked because the teams are so deep. But I also think it's important for these reasons. Midway through the season last year, there was a change in the points of emphasis relative to the officiating. So we saw a much more physical game. We like that. We're for that. We're certainly not against that in any way. We think it's probably better to have a balanced game. But you're still introducing a level of physicality into the game every single night that's going to wear anybody down. Couple that with the fact that the second half of the season is more compressed with less days off and more games or travel days than we've seen in 10 to 12 years. And you're going to see just the attrition of the league probably change a little bit more, but to get a better product, which is totally understandable. But I think depth matters there. The icing on the cake for all of that, relative to the depth, is the pace of the modern game is much different. So the days are the same. There's still 24 hours in the day. There was always physical basketball, but the amount of torque on the bodies and the way in which and how many possessions there are within a modern NBA game is just a different load. That's why I think the depth is important to all teams, not just to our team. And I think we're well positioned for that. And if we're turning every page, as we talked about, we'll find some things out of that as well if we stay curious about it. I'd just like to hit the op-ed one more time here. I think when we talk about that period of time, I was really trying to explain like a series of seasons, and sometimes people get lost. They forget a lot of the seasons because generally as people, myself included, we think about the beginning or we think of the end. And a lot of times we lose sight of the value of the middle of a journey. And what we all know is that the middle is always the longest part of anything that you're doing. And at some point we're going to hit the middle. I don't know that we're there yet. And the way I would define the middle is when your best laid plans, your visions and aspirations don't unfold sequentially in A, B, C, D, E, F. They don't go in order for you. Now, that's, for most of us, that's reality. But when you hit that period of time, generally that's where the novelty wears off, regression happens, plateaus happen. There could be some bad luck or some good luck that comes in there. And I think a lot of times that's where people tend to abandon their principles or their practices, and they kind of lose their way a little bit because the middle really is the longest part. And at some point, we'll confront that. But I think when we do, hopefully some of the lessons we're learning now will be able to stabilize us, guide us, and help us maintain our position in order to work through that. I think that's just something that's important because that's the type of organization that we want to all be a part of in this building. all the people that I work with, that I have the benefit of learning from, I think we all want to be a part of something that can endure over a period of time. And that's what we're focused on. So just in closing to our fans, and then we'll get to everyone's questions, there's no silver platters in Oklahoma. I've said that before. There's no silver platters in Oklahoma. But I would say anything is possible. It just can't be expected and shouldn't be expected to be handed over or to be easy. We, as an organization and as a team, have to earn our arrival. And we have one season to try to do that with, because that's all we have in front of us. That's the opportunity we have. We've got an extremely young, energetic, ambitious team that's constantly striving, and they're inspiring people to be around. They inspire me. And what we're trying to do is be the exception to an age-old rule in pro sports, which is you cannot win at the highest level with young teams. We recognize that in order to be exceptional, in order to be that team, you have to be willing to be an exception. And for us, that means staying curious, staying open, knowing, you can't find it if you're not looking and turning every page. That is really, for us, really important, irrespective of the external conversation or expectation, to be able to protect ourselves and maintain that mentality that has served us so well. We don't know how Chapter 17 is going to be remembered within the final catalog of Thunder history, and we don't expect to know that. We don't know how the season's going to unfold. We don't expect to know that either. All we have is the present, and we have the possibility of establishing ourselves in making our arrival in the Western Conference, which is what we've set out to try to be able to do over time. And all we really know how to do here is to use those opportunities and just press on. Just keep pressing on. Come regression or progression, we have to press on. And I think we have the type of mentality with our players and our building that are up for that challenge. So that's kind of my voice to the fans. We're super grateful for every one of them, especially those that have been with us from the very beginning. And I'm happy to take any questions from you guys.
Sure.